I'm Irenosen Okojie, I'm in Forest Hill Library and I'm reading from my piece, Kookaburra Sweet. Back in London, Cara emerged from Forest Hill Overground Station dishevelled, starving. Plain food had been paltry, inadequate. She remembered the strips of licorice in her rucksack, followed by Kizzy's potent smile. The confession that he was of no fixed abode, that he liked to fly God's class rather than first, he'd quipped, drinking juice from Banksia plants instead of alcohol that tasted like kangaroo piss. Her stomach rumbled, punctuating her pattern of thoughts. It was Saturday, the start of open house week, when people in Forest Hill received strangers into their homes to share artwork, conversation, music, anything. The streets hummed with activity. In the station forecourt, she passed tables of free edible plants. Hordes of people gathering around them were resistant to an orderly queue, grabbing plants like okra, winter luxury pumpkin, dill, rosemary. Some children left their parents' sides, rushing to the ticket machines, pressing their hands against the screens as if gathering evidence of the day's journey so far. They ran to the bikes under the shelter, leaning against each other in a false sense of stability. They circled the brightly painted piano, thrashing the keys in barely contained musical chaos before threading their way through the rest of the station forecourt. Cara reached inside her rucksack with tired hands, grabbing a packet of licorice. She ripped it open, bit into one, momentarily closing her eyes in delight as the sweet, bitter taste flooded her tongue. On the Dartmouth Road, where her flat was situated, she passed a mural of a giant white-haired woman in the clouds, surrounded by a fleet of red birds. The strip of licorice melted into her blood. She popped another one in her mouth. They were so Moorish, she finished the packet right there on the streets. In her suitcase, the bar outfit spilled a small electric horizon from the black shirt collar into a zip, an insect dead from shock in the right light. At the flat, she fell asleep in the bedroom. When she woke up, her body felt supple, soft, bendy, unfamiliar. She spotted a dark stain on the blue bedsheet. She looked at it with suspicion, rubbed the spot. Her fingers were black, licorice-coloured, stretchy. Her heart rate tripled. She leapt off the bed somewhat unsteadily, rushed to the mauve-coloured bathroom. Skincare products lined the edges of the tub, crowded the sink. She accidentally knocked over a bottle of Palmer's cocoa butter cream in her haste. Her toothbrush went flying. She switched on the light. The 60-watt bulb stuttered in anticipation as she rushed to the mirror, light flickering sporadically as though arguing with itself. Chest heaving, she stared at her reflection, her breath pale magician smoke. Sure enough, she was not herself, or she was herself but something different, something skewed and accidental, something tainted with the margin particles of an incense-smelling man who could mimic the curves of a sidewinder. Her bathroom had become a circus, balancing on two hinges, rocking unsteadily in the ether. She took tentative steps closer to the mirror. Sure enough, she had transformed into licorice, a black, sweet licorice woman, a licorice, sweet black woman, bendy, stretchy, adaptable in harsh conditions, resplendent and irrepressible, reconfigured heart oozing liquid midnight, necessary external jaggedness flung out like day traps, moist turning tongue set anti-clockwise to catch soft light, soft memory, soft landing. She turned the taps on for the sounds of the sea to fill the sink and tub. All that came through was bursting, rushing water. She placed her hand under the cold tap, the weight of water bending her fingers slightly. She used her right hand to adjust them back, then raised both hands to water her head with night dew. She turned the cold tap off. The blast of hot water meant the pipes started whistling. Slowly, then speedily, panicked by the possibilities of changes tumbling through their lengthy, corroded bodies. She pressed her fingers into her head, feeling her way around for a crack. Steam misted the mirror. She didn't want to melt. Melting meant not existing. She turned the hot water tap off, waiting for the whistling to stop. She started screaming. The fading sounds of the chugging pipes mutated into an alarm ringing in her head. Anxiety spread from the very heart of her, a burning sensation in her new body. Sydney had been a disaster. She was broken by it, almost. She stepped back away from the mirror, trying to weigh the ache within. The losses she'd left on Sydney Harbour, turning to twisted currencies glowing in the dark. The octopus-shaped critter that had tried to gain entry into her suitcase to find a corner to possess. She pressed her mouth against that corner to breathe, to steady herself. Loss of confidence, loss of income, loss of hearts, loss of lover. The ache inside her grew into a kite-shaped slipstream spotted with silver. She started to cry, heaving sobs threatening to become accomplices in the cramped bathroom. She needed to feel the ache, to do something. It was open house week, after all. She grabbed a black bin bag from the top of the cabinets. Around 1 a.m., she wandered the streets, bin bag in tow. Squishy sounds of her new limbs kept her company. She walked to the sprawling Horniman Museum gardens, found nothing to catch except the reflection of her old self in the cafe's glass doors and windows. That Cara had gone to Australia chasing a story. A dreadlock molasses-hued man who believed his lost mother appeared to him during volcano eruptions, who took tender photographs that captured her silhouette exiting those eruptions. Cara had wanted to write his story, but the man gave her heart to a volcano for his mother to eat. On the steep London road, she entered the white houses through windows left open. She gathered from the inhabitants things most people would never take during open house. The post office clerk's fear of failure, the sweet shop assistant's paranoia he'd die before doing half the items on his bucket list, the glint from the blade the kebab shop owner used to carve scenes for 3 stillborn babies trapped in a revolving winter, the deli owner's conversations to the gremlin he'd transplanted into his chest, that kept trying to break ceilings with a long, slimy tentacle. She wandered through houses while people slept, humming the tune Kizzy sang at the airport, leaving a trail of deep, warm sweetness, stuffing her bag until it was fit to burst. When she arrived back home, the bin liner split on her bed, on the crumpled tulip-patterned duvet. The things she'd caught had charred wings and were flapping towards possible exits frenetically. White airbags sprung from the corners of her bed, shrieking incessantly before the air left them into twisted, mean, sunken expressions, and the sharp pain exploding in Cara's chest before liquefying was unbearable. After discovering that a last self-collision resulted in change you couldn't foresee, Cara limped out to the Dartmouth Road the next morning, having caught her left foot in a trap she'd flung from herself. She clutched her plane ticket to Sydney, a sacrificial woman in the heat hollering Kizzy's song about becoming what you eat. It was bright out. The day was alcoholic. As she sang, her body began to separate. Her head went first, tossed into the blind spots of a sputtering drunk holding a Guinness can like a lover. Her head shrank rapidly. Her legs came off, tumbling backwards into an argument between the off-licence owner and a woman holding a leash without a dog she claimed she'd lost at Heathrow Airport. Cara's golden eyes uprooted into the traffic, speedily rolling between lanes, between tyres, frantically blinking away images of a life that were discarded receipts for gutted angels with streaks of black tears on their faces, reduced to husks on the bent skyline. Her arms were dark boomerangs, confused by an unplanned separation, the dizziness of slow traffic in the sky, attempting to embrace satellite dishes, antennas, and items that found their way to rooftops while the road swelled from resignation of a split, of a break somewhere that saw small creatures from accidents with Cara's last heartbeats mutating in their chests as they scurried onto pavements on either side, leaving patches of unleaded fuel and kaleidoscopic red in their attempts to talk. Residents from cafes and the boutique, village-like stores and eateries, including the Hill Lounge and kitchen, bird in hand, spilled out onto the street watching. 2 assistants from Sugar Mountain Sweet Shop abandoned its light, tantalising atmosphere of deep booths, board games and seductive retro sweets in large jars. They rushed out carrying a jar each to catch bits of Cara's body. People from Forest Hill pools filed out barefoot onto the pavement, still in their costumes, dripping translucent daydreams doubling as swimming strokes beneath the sun. The locals were chess pieces held still by a human combustion on a glimmering day. Cara's thighs spun. One slid down a lamppost, leaving a dark, honey-like trail before becoming stuck at the bottom. The other slid across the window display of Il Murto's Italian deli and ice cream store. Her head, now reduced to pulp, was being lapped up by the drunk on all fours in abandon, his tongue darting greedily, the Guinness can forgotten, squashed under his knee, pennies spilling from his pocket like a marauding coppery fountain. Kara's mouth was sylph-like, chased by an Aboriginal cowboy's hat into the distance before it melted onto the rim in the shape of an atom bursting. An accidental decoration. Her scattered teeth were white jewels for the afternoon. A stuntsman in a diving costume caught her vagina, sucking on it like the nectar of a goddess. Her hands were clasped together, prayer-like, while bits of clouds morphed into the shapes of temporary, pale clothing for the inhabitants of Forest Hill to wear as the uniform of witnesses. After their naive prayer, her hands eventually melted onto the wheel of a dented blue Ford Cortina that would run out of fuel later. And all that was left was the morning to come. All that was left was her torso on the edge, black, gleaming, edible, sweets, licorice sweets, full of warped, rhapsodic song in the traffic.